All right, guys, we got LeBron James drama. We got the Blake Griffin signing with the Nets, and we got Otto Porter getting bought out. Who's he signing with? The Golden State Warriors? Maybe the Utah Jazz? It's the Hoops Nerd Show. All right, guys, I've wanted to do one of these NBA shows for a while. The season has been crazy with it being shortened, 72 games. I haven't been able to do this as much, but it's fun to do this tonight. And I wanted to talk about some things that have been going on in the NBA outside of just the Jazz. This is the NBA show. So, anyways, the first thing I wanted to touch on is LeBron James. And I don't want to touch him on a lot about this because honestly, if you don't respect LeBron James, you're not an NBA fan. I mean, he is what he is. He's the most dominant player of this era, and I'm talking post Jordan. It's of this era. He's the most dominant player, and he's incredible. But there's something that gets on my nerves here a little bit with LeBron James, and it showed up again with this Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert picking them last thing. Can we grow up a little bit, LeBron? Like, he's my age. I'm 37. He's like a couple years younger than me. Like, when you get to your mid 30s, can we get out of the high school, junior high stuff? I had heard some things, like I had listened to, I think it was Waz on one of the Ringer podcasts talking about this with the Jazz, and like how LeBron James and Kevin Durant had kind of done this together, kind of planned it, that they'd pick the Jazz last to prove some weird point. It's what is this high school? Is this junior high? This isn't even high school. This is junior high stuff. It's like petty, dumb stuff that you do when you're like honestly 14 years old. Like, it just makes no sense. And so why they're doing this, I don't know, but it makes no sense. And it's obnoxious. Anyways, the point I want to say is that if LeBron James wants to be the greatest, he's got to be the greatest in every single way. And it just feels like he is so incessantly driven to get attention like this, to be looked at, to be talked about. And so they do these things on like TNT to get a laugh at another player's expense. And it's annoying. And while I was watching the All-Star game, and the All-Star game was fine, it was pretty fun. But what happens on the All-Star game is that you watch this and you just realize how many players have like an issue with LeBron. I know Steph kind of can get over things, but even Steph could have some issues with LeBron, who tried to show him up in every finals, tried to, passive aggressively on social media say I'm the greatest and all these different things. And, shout out to Steph, who's able to kind of get over that silly stuff. But he does it with every other player on the court. You've got players that have been traded away. Like Kyrie Irving was not laughing or probably involved with the Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert stuff, because guess what? Kyrie Irving had to deal with the passive aggressive stuff with LeBron for years. It's the reason that he left Cleveland. He was tired of LeBron and this silly pettiness. Otherwise, LeBron might have stayed there longer, but we know what LeBron does. LeBron leaves for better situations whenever he's in some sort of, when things go a little bit sour because of LeBron. So LeBron sours things with Kyrie Irving. I promise you, Kyrie was trying to prove something that game, and that's why he was playing so hard. Kyrie wasn't laughing about it because Kyrie's had to deal with that stuff with LeBron. And then we've got this like comments from LeBron after the game about whether he's going to take the vaccine or not. I am so sick of LeBron James having a comment on every single thing. If he wants to be the center of attention, then you got to be saying the right things. And if you're going to be asked, if you want to be asked about every political issue, then you better say it right. And we know that he just is so incessant about getting the attention and being talked about everything. And that's fine. That's fine. But when you're in the limelight, LeBron, could you please say the right thing and say you're going to get the vaccine? Because we need to get to 70% immunity. And if you're going to be a leadership, you want to be a leader and a voice for more than just basketball, then you need to say the right things. Tell people you're getting the vaccine and they should. That's annoying to me. It annoys me. Stop being a thought leader if you're not going to say the right things. This is serious stuff. And for him to say something like that, it's going to affect a lot of people. It just is. He is a voice leader and he needs to say the right thing. So either step up and do the right thing and say the right thing, or stop with the pettiness, LeBron. It's enough. It's annoying. All right. That's all I got to say. That's all I got to say about it. He's an incredible player. He's done incredible things. His school, his donations, his help in Black Lives Matter, all that stuff is amazing and great. But he's, some of this other stuff, it just feels like he wants attention. So, and it's other players' expense. Like, it's childish. Stop it. Like the Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell stuff, that's childish. And now guess what, LeBron? If the Jazz beat you in the playoffs, woo, woo, that's rough stuff. All right, Blake Griffin gets a buyout from the Detroit Pistons, goes to the Brooklyn Nets. I actually wondered if the Utah Jazz are one of those teams up there. There's a lot of contenders. I kind of wondered if there was no way he was going back to the Clippers with them kind of trading him out of the blue. That was just like pure pettiness. Well, not pettiness. I mean, that was just like, have you ever seen a player commit and be like the face of a franchise and then just get traded 3 months later like the Clippers did to Blake Griffin? There was no way he was going there. I thought for like a hot second that maybe he would think about the Jazz because he could come off the bench. But it's obvious that Blake Griffin has connections with Kyrie. They're good friends, apparently. And he's going to the Brooklyn Nets, who, if we're being honest, probably the favorites to win the title this year. So he's going for a title. They only pay him $1 million, so he gets bought out. He pays back $18 million. Imagine making so much money that $18 million is a small portion of what you make. That's crazy. But that's what he's paying back. He's going to join the Brooklyn Nets, and honestly, I don't know how much it really changes things for that team. He's not a great shooter anymore. He's shooting like 31%, and some of that could be based off of his team, although I don't think Blake Griffin is getting a huge focus from defenses these days. Jeremy Grant has been incredible on the Detroit Pistons, and so it'll be interesting to see. He'll probably get a few extra shots. He'll probably have a few pretty good games, but like, I don't know. We'll see. It's interesting, but I really don't think it changes much. Like, is he really much better than Jeff Green? Jeff Green sprays the floor. Probably a little tougher. I actually like his passing. I actually do think it's like a slight upgrade on Jeff Green. But by how much? Not a lot. Key himself. Thank you, Key. LeCarron James is always saying stupid, blank, petty. Yes, I agree. Like for all the things that I love LeBron for like the incredible basketball, the incredible charity work, the help with communities and things like that. It's amazing. It really is. And then there's the other side where it's just this constant, incessant need to be looked at, to be talked about, to be in the conversation for every single thing. Did you see LeBron? Did you see what he did? Did you see that he's number 3 in scoring all time now? LeBron congratulating himself on Instagram, not just retweeting other people, making posts about himself on Instagram. It's just like very much caught up in his own image and his own legacy. And he goes to LA just to make a movie, just like Michael Jordan, which, by the way, after a while it's a little much. Michael Jordan did those things and he wasn't copying someone else. Like, can you do your own path, LeBron? I mean, that's the other thing. Michael Jordan didn't spend all his time talking, and maybe it would have been different on social media, but it hasn't changed as he's gotten older. Like, there's the Jordan Brand Twitter account, but Jordan doesn't even have a Twitter account. Jordan just wanted to win. That's all Jordan cared about. And he stayed in one place and he won there, and he was 6-0 in the finals. He quit and came back and still won, which is kind of insane. LeBron likes everyone to say he's the greatest. Michael Jordan just showed it. There's a difference. Finally, the news that's pretty exciting. Otto Porter looks like he might be getting bought out by the Chicago Bulls. And Otto Porter is an excellent basketball player. This might be the gem of the my dog wanted to join. Hi, Audrey. So Otto Porter is joining is going to be one of the most, if the Chicago Bulls sign or buy out Otto Porter, he's going to be just an absolute find for someone in the NBA. He is going to have a chance to just really make an effect on someone else. I know he has some injury history, but Otto Porter is 27 years old. Not that old. And he has a $28 million, this final year on his contract's $28 million. There is just no one out there that is giving $28 million of value to get Otto Porter. It just doesn't match up. Audrey, Puffy, no. So what that means is you've got a player that's worth $28 million the last year of his contract, and he's a really nice player. The Chicago Bulls are not trading him to the Golden State Warriors for Andrew Wiggins. Sorry, Warriors fans. That's not happening. But he is going to be bought out because that gives them an opportunity to clear their books. It might be a goodwill thing to Otto Porter, who has been a good dude for them. Let's see. Key himself. MJ had a dad in the house. LBJ didn't. Just saying. Yeah, and that might affect things. Like maybe LeBron is trying to kind of just seek that attention that maybe he didn't get. And I appreciate LeBron James and his story. I mean, with his mom and the things they went through to go together, they're impressive. It gets frustrating, And by the way, Michael Jordan's dad was shot, and Michael Jordan had to deal with all that, and that's a whole other thing that maybe we won't get into. But anyways, I have a lot of respect for LeBron James. It just drives me crazy sometimes. Anyways, back to Otto Porter. No one's going to trade for Otto Porter. $28 million of salary, that's a ton. And you can't trade that into a trade exception. No one has that big of a trade exception. I promise you the Boston Celtics would go after him, but I believe their trade exception is only $20 million. And I don't believe you can add trade exception plus salary. You have to, if you want to absorb a player, it has to go within the trade exception. So the Boston Celtics can't get him. It's $8 million over. So what do teams do? Well, they might be able to buy him out. And the Chicago Bulls, they probably are looking to just end this contract because it opens up a roster spot. They can maybe sign someone else or maybe bring up one of their two-way players or G League players to try to give some run to one of those guys. It also might pave the way for them to make a different move. If they open a roster spot and they have that empty salary from buying him out, and I might be wrong. I'm not completely sure if that's how this works. But anyways, the rumor is that he's being bought out. And then so that makes it available to other teams. What I'll tell you right now is the Utah Jazz should be looking at getting this guy right away. The Lakers, the Clippers, the Nets should be looking at getting Otto Porter because he's fantastic. He's still shooting 40% from three this season, and you can get him for cheap. So the Jazz have a biannual exception that's, I think, something like $3.5 million that they could offer him. For example, Blake Griffin signs with the New York Nets for the minimum. It was $1 million. Utah can offer the $3.5 million biannual exception. Now, why would he go to the Utah Jazz? Well, actually, I do know that he had interest in Utah during the Hayward saga. The Jazz were looking to sign him during that time, but because Hayward waited so long, he ended up re-signing elsewhere, and the Jazz weren't able to throw like a big contract at him to try to lure him away from Washington before he was traded to the Chicago Bulls. That was Hayward's fault, and the Jazz weren't able to offer something because they didn't know what they were going to be doing. If Hayward had left and let them know, Otto Porter probably was on the Utah Jazz this whole time. But because of that, they haven't been able to. So there is interest from the Jazz for Otto Porter, and I think that they should do everything they can to get him. It's just a matter if he gets bought out, he can go wherever he wants, and he can sign for whatever he wants. If Utah wants to get him, that's probably going to be something where they're sitting down with him and say, hey, we'll give you this biannual exception. We'll give you everything we can. It's like $3.7 million. And then what if since you're 27, can we sign you to a 4-year, $15 million per year contract? And guess what? You get to play with Mike Conley because the Jazz are going to re-sign him, Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, Otto Porter, Royce O'Neal, Bojan Bogdanovic, and you've got a stacked squad. And by the way, if the Jazz are able to sign Otto Porter, and I'm a Jazz fan, you all know this, I want them to sign Otto Porter. If they are able to sign Otto Porter, that means you've got a chance to play him alternating with Bogey. So you have Bojan Bogdanovic, and you probably have Otto Porter coming off the bench. But what happens is maybe you have Otto Porter closing games. One of the things I've been scared about is that at the end of games, when you've got one-on-one situations and teams playing a close game, you have someone going right at Bojan Bogdanovic. So, and we've seen it 3 of the last 4 games that the Jazz have lost. And it's been Bojan Bogdanovic. We saw it at the end of the Philadelphia game where they went to overtime, which they shouldn't have. You can see my last video where I lost my mind and why that shouldn't have even happened. But in that overtime, guess what? Tobias Harris went right at Bojan Bogdanovic. In this scenario, if you have Otto Porter, that's not happening. You can have him guard that spot, and he can be your closer. And guess what? He shoots 40% from 3, solid defender, decent rebounder, just a perfect fit for what the Jazz need. Perfect fit. And then you saw the same thing against the Heat. It was a close game at the end. What happened? Jimmy Butler, who'd he go after? Bojan Bogdanovic. Right at the end of the game, he was going at him every play. And the Jazz weren't able to score on the other end. And so this is the thing that makes me terrified if I'm the Utah Jazz, is when we get into a playoff situation, and let's say the Jazz get past the first round, and the second round you're playing maybe the Lakers or maybe the Clippers, And guess what? Maybe it's game 7. Maybe you've played really well. It's a close game in game 7, like we always know. What's going to happen with Bojan Bogdanovic? Are you going to have him being backed down by Kawhi? Do you want LeBron James looking at Bojan Bogdanovic and just going right at him? Because that's some scary stuff, man. That is some scary stuff. And those are things that happen in the playoffs. It's a different game. You've got guys trying to score in different ways in the playoffs. And if you don't have a guy that can, if you have a weakness in that chain, like we talked about, that weak link is going to be what the good teams are going to go after over and over and over. And we saw that these last three of the last 4 games the Jazz have lost. They've gone at that weak link at the end of the game. And that's on Quinn Snyder to adjust too. I mean, that's on Quinn Snyder to change. You can't just run the same things out like we did in the Denver series and just do the same thing over and over and expect something to happen. Guess what? That ended up in the Jazz losing a 3-1 lead in the playoffs. Doing the same things over and over and expecting change. It's insanity. And so Utah either needs to make a move to get Otto Porter so they can play him at the end of games, or it's a big risk what's going on in the playoffs. But I can tell you what, like Furby Jr. says, $2. Thank you, Furby. You the man, Furby Jr. Haywood, darn him, yes. But who said it? Someone here said it. Let's see. Oh, yeah, Bogey's defense is sus. Yes, Bogey's defense is very sus. It is. We've seen it the last 3 of the 4 games. Anyone who disagrees, go watch overtime against the Philadelphia 76ers, or go watch that Heat game and watch what Jimmy Butler did to Bojan Bogdanovic. It's a problem. It's a real problem. And for all the good that Bogey does on offense, you've got to figure out in certain situations how to sub him out and get strong defensively. And that means either signing someone like Otto Porter or freaking play Miaoni for once. My goodness. He's right there. He's right there. All right, guys, that's all I got to say tonight. Thank you for everyone who joined live chat. It's the NBA news show on the Hoops Nerd channel. Make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. If you haven't joined the channel, please join. Tonight, let's just give a shout out to our All-Stars. And by the way, I've got a new thing I'm working on for starters, which starters and All-Stars. So when I'm going to work on a video that shows just kind of how I make my channel and what I do. And I want to show all you guys how to do it. So let's see. I got to pull this up. Sorry, this is what happens when you go live. Okay, so, all right. Shout out to our All-Stars. Lee Christensen, Shan Therick, Ryan Perry, Justin TYH, Patrick Akubo, Robert Hall, Kyle Christensen, DW, David Lee, and Jorge Arizaga. Gracias, mi amigo. Guys, that's all I got to say tonight. I want to see Otto Porter on the Jazz. I really do. I really want to see Otto Porter on the Jazz. If they could find a way to do that, it's lights out, man. That guy is a solid defender. I know he has injury history. I know it's hard to keep him on the floor. But if you can just keep him under 20 minutes a game, keep him healthy, rest him, so then in the playoffs you can play him in specific situations and have him banging threes at 40%. Woo, that's nice. The Utah Jazz would win the title. That's what they would do. Guys, like and subscribe. Join the channel. I will talk to you next.